Welcome to another episode of Spatial Conversations. Today, I have with me Justin from Southwest Airlines, and we're going to be digging into spatial computing, AI, rapid prototyping, and all kinds of other great topics. Thanks for jumping in with us, Justin.
Glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. So as we start to talk about all of this advanced technology, let's start and talk about you. How did you get into this more advanced innovation kind of tech? What pulled you in?
Um, I think it's more of just kind of an upbringing thing more than anything else. I've been in technology and engineering and software engineering for over 30 years. And, you go through plenty of production life cycles. And
So
then,
with those life cycles, any lessons learned that kind of jumped out at you?
um, yeah, invest in a good operations manager.
That sounds like some stories. Any that you
Yes,
can
absolutely,
share?
absolutely. No, 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 no. I've been a sole proprietor for a very long time,
Uh,
and you struggle with the build and sell, right? And so
mhm.
I've always liked being an entrepreneur. I've always liked being a self-starter and playing with the innovative. Um, and um, and so when the opportunity came about to go towards enterprise innovation and a lot more stability there. And it was a wonderful opportunity. And being with Southwest and the Southwest Technology Innovation, hands down, has been one of the best experiences of my life. So
Awesome. Well, thank you for that
sure,
background.
sure,
So as you've had a chance to dive into, we'll start with all things spatial. As you've had a chance to
sure.
kind of lean into spatial, um, first off, to just kind of help level set and make this real for folks, how would you describe how spatial is different from the VR that folks kind of started when they went virtual? What jumps out at you as the differences?
I think from the spatial standpoint is there's a big difference between VR and mixed reality. Mixed reality allows you to obviously blend your reality with and augmenting it. Um, Now, being able to co-share, like co-locate and or remotely share those experiences within a spatial environment really enhances the experience. Um,
Like this right here and being
like
able to
this
collaborate
right now.
remotely. Hmm.
Yes, correct. Yeah,
I love
yeah.
that. Well, so of the things that you've seen spatially, and we'll say particularly in the Apple Vision Pro, anything that jumps out at you as kind of one of the coolest wow moments that you've had that you remember?
Um, Quite honestly, Apple's diving into this technical space is what leaped me into it. I was not a very big VR person to start with. Their attention to detail, their attention to fidelity, really kind of broke that barrier. Um, their ecosystem was the decision point for where it reduced the barrier of entry for me and for my enterprise team to bring into it.
Nice. Now you mentioned the fidelity in particular. Any parts of that that jump out at you in terms of obviously we've got cameras, but in terms of what that fidelity is doing for the user?
Um, it's from how I understand the question, it's blending the environment. But when I talk about the attention to detail and the attention to fidelity, you look at other products on the market space, and I've tried almost all of them in the last year and a half. And one thing that other manufacturers do not pay attention to is color temperature. Um, Apple
Interesting.
Apple pays attention to color temperature. The color temperature of the vision that you're seeing through your eye to what is actually in your environment and the pass through is more realistic than anything else. Everybody else makes it too blue, too white, too pure.
Okay.
So, anyways, that's just the small detail of just creates realism.
Well, and I think that's a great example that Apple is one of those companies that really focuses on those details to make
Yeah,
a significant impact. I
yeah,
love that. Thank you. Um, well, so as we start talking a little bit about the uses for spatial computing,
sure.
um, you had mentioned some things where a big part of what you're doing with innovation is needing to build things out and test them, and that spatial is accelerating that. Can you walk us through what that looks like?
Sure. Typically, a lot of times when we do a proof of concept or a prototype, we're looking at parts we're looking at behavioral change, part we're looking at environment change. And we do a lot of in-station or fabrication and tests, right? In order to
Mhm.
get there, you have to iterate through a concept, mock prototypes, or mock fabrication.
And you're talking
Um,
physical setups of
Physical.
something at a gate or something elsewhere.
Correct. Correct. If we,
Okay.
for instance, if we want to test bag drop, a whole new concept for
Mhm.
bag drop or something like that, we would actually, first prototype it or essentially foam core cutout concepts
Okay,
and to
make it
see how
real. Making
make
it
it real.
real. Hmm.
Right. But all of that has time, right? And you're dedicated to a solution when you test. Whereas in spatial or in a pre-visualization standpoint, you have the ability to iterate a lot faster. You have a lot ability to iterate with the same audience that you're testing. Whereas if
Mm-hmm.
you built a physical fabrication, you might test somebody, take that feedback, go back, rebuild something else. But by that time, you're testing a different audience, not the same audience.
So if you look at the time cycles of, I guess, what that looked like in the physical realm to being able to do that a little bit more virtually, any expectations of how what that speed up looks like
Um,
or could
no,
look like?
I think you can probably get down to real time. In some, okay, let's be realistic. You could probably get down to a daily cycle, right? If you're
Nice.
on, depending on if you've got a modeler in house that's able to rapidly modify models, right?
Hmm.
We have ideation in different areas of how to enhance that in real time, and I think we're going to talk about that in a little bit. Um, but I definitely think you're going from a month at least down to a couple of days, definitely to be able to iterate on what the potential of a space might look like or what the flow and the walkthrough is.
So a 10 to
Um,
15x speed up.
Probably, yeah, probably.
That's awesome to
We'll
being able
we'll
to
we'll know
innovate.
more shortly. Yeah, sorry.
I cannot wait to hear more about those. Yes. Well, you had started leading us toward the okay. So we talked about the pre-visualization piece, but wait, there's more. There now we can inject superpowers into that visualization and tap into that everybody's favorite topic, AI. What does that look like as you start kind of bringing that into the visualization to kind of assist?
I mean, the way we're looking at it and how it applies to this current concept that we have is the ability to do generative model generation, right? Or 3D model generation. They don't want to mix the machine learning
Mm-hmm.
models. Um, is to if you're in a collaborative environment like this, and like the piece that we're looking at doing is more of a collaborative space where people are together in a physical environment looking at the same thing all at the same time, everything within synchronization of each other.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're looking at how to enhance our operations, um, podium, right? The podium at the gate, and you're able to sit there and say, wouldn't it be better if we had, an iPad stand sitting on top of that podium, and be able to generate that in
Mm-hmm.
real time, be able to have a base model that you can enhance and provide verbal suggestion, right? And have real time mesh generation occurring inside of it. Even
Nice,
if it's late,
nice.
10-15 second latency, but the iteration process on that is significant.
Not having to
Rather,
jump out, go to design tools. It's just you've got
correct,
something there. Mm-hmm.
correct. So that's what we're looking at playing with in the next month or so.
Very nice.
Yeah,
Now you'd mentioned bringing folks together kind of in that same environment, kind of the
sure,
sorts of things we're looking at here.
sure.
Um, and that's folks so that again you can bring a crew in to run through the simulation itself in that simulated environment, or more to do the design and review side.
Both, right? So you have the aspect. There's um, when Apple first kind of really started playing with ARKit, way back when, they had the whole concept of shared point cloud,
Right.
where you can have collaborative environments of doing things. And then the Vision Pro comes out with the shared experience, which is great for remote and bringing people together. In our situation, we're looking at using collaborative. So everything we're doing is mixed versus immersive.
Mm-hmm.
We're augmenting a physical space so we can test like in what a lobby would be in Fusion and physically
Mm-hmm.
augment a lobby in an airport or a gate inside the gate area. But having 5, 10, 15 people together all seeing the experience
Mm.
all at once, being able to edit the experience all at once. So you have creation and then viewing, right? So if you're trying to show it to the executives to get approval, they're able to visualize and see a lot faster, right? They're not going to be in the edit process, but they might come back and say, I have an idea. Wouldn't it be better if it's here, here, here? And you can do that in real time with them.
And I love what you just hit on there is that there's the different roles where the
Yeah.
involvement comes in. There's the whether it's the creatives or folks designing the experience, there might be others testing it, then there might be leaders who need to understand. And again, just making it real across that whole group, that sounds like that's going to have a huge impact for you guys.
Yeah.
I'm
No,
excited to see how that goes.
yeah. 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 Yeah.
Oh,
Looking
that is
forward.
awesome. Well, so that's today or very near future. If we fast forward a couple of years, where do you think this spatial coupled with AI stuff could go? What kind of impact could it have on folks?
uh, I think there's two roads, right? I mean, obviously there is, from the enterprise standpoint, I think we're going to see a lot more play out as far as what our capabilities are and what our adoption rate is, right? Over the last, 10 years, wearable and, VR and augmented experiences have really proven a lot more of stability within enterprise. That was always a big question mark. How does it fit in? I don't understand. How does,
Hmm.
how does cybersecurity work out for it? How does deployment work? We're figuring that out. And that's, over the last
Hmm.
5 years, it was a big question. And, at a lot of the conferences I'm going to, it's not really the question anymore.
Well,
It's
especially with the Apple ecosystem, as you'd mentioned,
the
this
Apple
we manage
ecosystem.
these Vision Pros the same way you would the stuff you've already got experience with.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're tackling, mobile devices, whether,
Hmm.
depending on how we're. So now it's just finding the business use cases. Our
Hmm.
focus a lot is, we build a nut and we try to find the squirrel, to adopt the nut. Um, but yeah, I mean.
So how do we teach the squirrels to help better describe the nuts they're looking for? Any suggestions there?
That's always a challenge. That's always a challenge. Make it compelling, make it, meet their business needs, and a lot of times they'll adopt, but it's always going to evolve. So, but back to your original question, where do I see it in the next 5 years? That's the ethereal question. Is what is the best consumer adoption? I think we're going to go a lot further when it becomes more of a passive wearable experience versus
Hmm.
a lot more of, um, the immersive experience. I think, once we make a lot more headway with wearable glasses, I think that's going to have a huge impact, especially with if you can get the fidelity and the realism, that you are seeing now with the products that we're coming out with, but in more of a, lightweight wearable, set of glasses. I think that's going to have a huge impact and a lot more adoption. So
And as you said, Apple really drove that fidelity and quality, and it's the same way they had to invent a ton of technology to get the Vision
sure,
Pro to where
yeah,
it is. There's a bunch more tech that's going to have to get invented to get to that glasses state, but there's no reason to suspect we won't get there. I
yeah,
love
no,
that.
keep driving. So it's, everybody who's playing, everybody who has a criticism against a product, is that those products are the foundation. Everything has
Yeah.
value. So
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah,
Well, if there's an organization or folks that are looking to lean into starting with spatial and bringing it into their company, any suggestions you have of just good places to start of how to start thinking about it or executing on that?
um, dip, focus on your existing skill set within your organization. If you're an Android-based organization, Android XR is starting to make a lot of headway in that area. Don't necessarily retool. Leverage a ecosystem that you have a lot invested in already. We have a lot of invested in, Swift and a lot of Apple frameworks, and so the transition for us, into the Apple Vision Pro was a no-brainer. Cost margin, for a headset versus having to retool, 8 years of libraries and code
Mm.
base that you have is a no-brainer. It's not the cost of the headset; it's the cost in order to move quickly for us. So that would be kind of my big recommendation there. Transitioning from the two-dimensional to the three-dimensional was probably one of the biggest hurdles
Mm.
for me. I have no experience in the three-dimensional, and I racked my brain on trying to do it. And it's not like I can lean outside my cube and talk to my colleague next to me and go, all right, okay, how you doing this? What's the best way?
It's different. It is really different.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, and Reality Kit, especially for spatial, um, there is not a lot written out there. So you can't find as much as you can on Stack Overflow. The network of people out there is not as vast. And so, I mean, I literally was, hitting people up on LinkedIn who have great posts and just introducing myself to them and seeing if they're open to collaborate. So luckily, John on your team has been involved with Southwest, and so I didn't want to cold call him, but I still, I was like,
Well, as
poked
always,
him a
we're
couple
happy
of
to be
times.
resources and help with this because this
So
is the
yeah,
cool
yeah,
stuff that ends
yeah,
up making such a huge impact. So we totally get
absolutely,
it. Yeah.
absolutely. So yeah, yeah.
Oh, very nice. Well, so last question for you. So as you're looking at business cases around, so again, the rapid prototyping sounds like it's got a huge set of business value around that. Um, Ignoring what you might be already doing behind the scenes, anything that you can think of looking forward in terms of business use cases where there's business value, other places where organizations, whether that's Southwest or somebody else, what kind of value does spatial computing bring that folks should be thinking about?
Of course, my brain is always going to dive into Southwest, but um, I mean, we ideate on um, a lot of digital twinning. I think there's a lot of value in that area. I don't know if I'm answering the question correctly because I think I'm going more into business use cases more than anything. I guess
Well,
it's
that's actually perfect. Perfect. So
okay.
from you mentioned the digital twins, and so that the rapid prototyping was kind of putting physical devices out. And when you're talking digital twins, are you talking about those that are actually having either pulling IoT data in or other more advanced features
Essentially,
to
yeah.
them?
So
Okay.
yeah, so basically, think about it from a standpoint of data visualization a lot more than anything else. Um, we would take a look at the state of a station, right? Because you have a flight come in that has 26 wheelchairs on it. The people that it takes in order to get those wheelchairs off the plane and so forth requires more personnel. So where do you get them from? Right? You have an irregular operation such as a storm or a weather storm or a delayed flight. It requires resources to move around. A plane late at one gate affects. So if you are able to take all that data and be able to apply it to a visualization piece, you can have um, a center of operations being able to look at the pain points of a station at any given time, right? You're able to look at from an overview, right? It's very similar to what was that Navigator app where you'll be able to look at flight data in real time and visualize
Mm-hmm.
forecasting and planes coming in. You can do the same thing with the network center of operations and being able to, if you ever look at our network, our NOC, you got desks that have 12 screens because they have
Yes.
weather data, they've got all the different data points all coming in. You can definitely do different types of visualization there, right? You can be able to look at our entire network at one time and where our planes are. So there's a lot of different things that there's a lot of potential with it for
Got it. So it's not just drop people into a virtual version of
no,
a
no,
gate. It's really step back and get a clear understanding of everything that's happening in an environment, and the
sure,
digital twin being a whole airport, an entire airspace, whatever that happens to be. That's
correct.
all right. I love that.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, thanks for diving in with us today.
absolutely.
This was awesome. So, got to do the finale. I love
Awesome.
that. Again, virtual interaction. That's perfect. So, thanks a lot for jumping in, Justin,
Absolutely.
and thanks for joining us for another spatial conversation.